So, welcome everyone to yet another inspiring and motivating IAPC&M author series where we are very fortunate to get to pick the brains of those amazing people who have actually made it right through to the very end of the process. This series can be found indeed on our blog, which complements our book review club. So be sure to check that one out as well. And maybe you too are dreaming of writing a book, and that, like me, it keeps getting postponed behind 101 other reasons which seem to be very important at the time, then you are in the right place here, because here is where we get to hear exactly the why and the how of actually writing the book, and also what having a book published has actually done for their business. So my name is Julie Kennedy. I'm your IAPC&M host, and today I am delighted to welcome the absolutely lovely Kim A. Page, communication expert, voice coach, TEDx speaker, and author, of course, of The Right Kind of Loud, Finding Your Communication Voice, which I must say is a fantastic title. It really is. The Right Kind of Loud. We all tend to associate loud with, is loud right? Should we be loud? We often say to women, speak up, be louder, but you do need to find that right balance to the right kind of loud. So Kim, thank you very much for being here with us today. And for those who haven't yet had a chance to listen to the wonderful masterclass that Kim gave, it was last week or the week before, I suggest you check that one out as well. So Kim, you wrote a book. I mean, had you always wanted to write a book?
Thank you. Thank you for your bubbly and enthusiastic and very right kind of loud introduction. It's very enjoyable because you're so elastic and so bouncy. There's so much aliveness in your voice and in the way you speak, So, and I mean, we are very impacted by that when we log on to something, especially when it's on the screen, because we go from 5 to 2 senses. So I can't smell, I can't touch, I can taste, but I can hear and I can see. And so that voice and that aliveness becomes ever so much more important. So thank you. And now I'm not answering your question, which I will. So had I always wanted to write a book? I think I had a passion for words that started when I was very young. Before I could write, I had a little black book and a notebook, and I asked my mother to write down the words that I thought tasted nice. So, and this is me very young, because I learned to write very young as well. And so I've always had this, like, words are like special, like magic. And then in my teenage years, I was a hidden poet, as many of us are. We write all that poetry, and it's like you have your soul, it's very sensitive, put it in the drawer. And then I actually studied also writing in Sweden. At the time, it was one of the best author schools, and I did that, and I was very into the words, but I had all these stuff, young soul, things that hadn't healed, not efficient enough, not strong enough. So when I look back, I'm like thinking, why didn't I write something and publish it? But that was kind of completely, that was for the other ones who were cool or smart, or, like there was all these barriers. But anyway, so that was my young self. So I've dipped it, and then I dipped in and out of poetry, and I had different periods. So that's kind of one part of my old self, of course. And my career is in communications. So that's another kind of writing. And funnily enough, I teach creative writing. So that was one of the first things I started teaching, when I became a trainer. So I've done creative writing. In the beginning, I would do it with troubled teens. And then I would do it, with unions. And then I've done this as a team building tool. And I also had educations for students who were studying to work as pedagogues in kindergartens or teachers. So I would be the writing teacher. So it's been a part of my career from the beginning. Right. And I've actually done creative writing workshops also in the prison in Denmark and in the prison in Dubai, which is a very special place.
I imagine.
I was very idealistic at this time in the beginning of my career, because I was doing writing workshops all over Copenhagen as it was. And I thought, where would it be most inspiring to do your writing? And this is very, very naive, I would say.
But beautiful of you, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. I would have thought exactly the same thing. I could totally resonate with what you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because I thought, where would it, you write yourself free? And
Yeah.
then I after some research, I came into one of the biggest state prisons outside Copenhagen. And the first time was very brutal, Julie. It was because, of course, I had no idea of what that atmosphere would be like.
Right.
And so the first time was very brutal. However, they called me back. So I came back several times.
So then you got a
And
chance to sort of really
yeah,
feel
when I
it.
came back, I had a chance to adjust because then I knew what to expect. And then we had some, I mean, also the first time we had some really magical writing moments. So anyway, so writing is a big part of me.
Right, exactly. So it's
And
not just something you did to promote your business or
no,
something.
no,
It's
no, no, no.
always
This
been
has
a core
been,
part of you.
yeah, it's always been a part. And I mean, I've written journals since I was, I mean, like 10 or so. So I mean, I have boxes of journals and,
Yeah,
you know.
so do I. I think I've got more boxes than anything else. I could actually
You
use them
see,
as a
and we
dining
can't throw them
table.
away. We don't want anyone else to read them, but we can't throw them away for whatever weird reason it is,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So 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 yeah, so writing has always been there in some way, shape, or form. And then when it comes to my career, many people said, why don't you write a book?
Yeah.
And I always felt, well, I don't know enough about each topic to write a book. I don't know enough about the voice to write a book. I don't know enough about creative writing to write a
So you
book.
were stopping
Don't know
yourself. So you
enough.
were doing what we're all doing, those of us listening to you, thinking of
Yes.
801 reasons why we can't do it. Okay.
Yes.
Good to hear.
Yes. And again, because I didn't feel like I knew enough of the different disciplines I trained. And then one day, suddenly, in the car with my friend, we were driving back from Bab al Shams into Dubai. And I suddenly heard myself, you know, if I found one thing that could connect the different things that I train, maybe I could write a book. And from then on, it went super fast.
Right.
So what was missing for me was that kind
The
of
link.
light bulb, like, oh, I don't need to be specialist. And in my book, I have 6 different toolboxes. I have speak right, move right, listen right, connect right, tell it right, etc. So when I had that, then it was actually, I mean,
Because
it
it
was a
is
lot of work.
amazingly comprehensive. When I hear you say I didn't know enough, and I'm thinking, my goodness, you know, I hosted that masterclass. You certainly do know an awful lot, and a lot
Thank
of
you.
stuff that needs to be formulated that somehow we might have thought of at some point, but not like that, and not in the effective tool that it is. I mean, you're an incredible source of wisdom. So basically, your idea was then, okay, so you put everything together. A book would allow you to like crystallize everything that you know in a practical guide. And was your intention, was it, you know, just something that you felt you needed to give, or was it with the idea of promoting your business, of attracting clients, of using it as a business card or for promotional reasons?
I think 2 things. Of course, my wanting to be of service self wanted it to be so that the people who can't be in my sessions, so they can't afford coaching, or they're not in my courses, that they can pick it up and make it and have, you know, access to some of the stuff that I've developed, you know, because I've worked my whole life to get here. So you know, so I made it very intentionally as easy as possible to read. You know, I avoid it's very, my intention was that people can pick it up and use it.
Yes.
And that feedback I got from very many people said, wow, it's very short, crisp chapters. There's an overview of the exercises. There's no difficult words.
Right.
It's written in a way so that I have one of my friends who wrote a beautiful review on Amazon. It made me cry. You know, when somebody just gets it, it was just like, you know, he's also a writer and we're close friends. And he said, the language is written so intimately. So it feels like I'm sitting with Kim and having a conversation with her. And then I just like, that's exactly what I did. So that there's like, there's that.
You feel heard, right? You feel really heard for what your whole intention was, right?
Yes. And also, by the way, the book is very short. I edited out about 40% in the process. So because when I started writing, I was afraid that I didn't know enough. So for each topic, I would then splurge out lots.
Yes.
And then, especially when I came to the Speak Right section, because I've obviously worked a lot with presentations and public speaking. So, and then also I have injected personal stories throughout the book, because I thought you need to make a choice. Do you write a business book based on academic research or an experience?
Right.
And because I don't work inside academia, I work on the floor. So I thought I'm going to use stories on the floor. And then I'm going to do stories about how I learned these tools, because I want to make it authentic and trustworthy. And then, of course, in the beginning, I had too many stories. So the perspective shifted as I was writing from, do I know enough, to what do they need?
But
Like,
I mean, that's exactly what we're here to talk about today, because I mean, that's something which confuses a lot of us. So I think there are really two groups. One is those who really struggle to think, okay, what do I know? What can be of value? And then a large majority of us who've been around for a while, who in a way know too much, right? And that we then struggle to focus on one thing, or to structure on one thing. And we think, this is our one book, our one chance to actually do it. And we try to cram everything in it. And at some point, it's just a gigantic mess. Now I'm speaking from experience. You need to really, how did you do that process of choosing which way to go, and to have the courage to hack out 40%? Did somebody help you? Did somebody guide you? Or was it really just you focusing on, maybe there might be another book, I don't need to give them everything all at once, because it'll be confusing. So how did you actually go through that part of the process?
When it came to the editing, it was actually very organic. It was me in the process, because this is what I call this book a download book. I didn't invent anything. I downloaded what I had been on the floor saying for 20 years or 20 plus years.
I get you.
Something like that. I don't know, a long time. And so in the beginning, when I sat drafting, I thought the material was so boring. I thought it was insanely boring. And by the time I was into chapter 3, I was almost desperate. And I had a lovely neighbor, a young Indian guy who worked in HR. And he would come by, and he would come by and say hello once in a while. And I said, excuse me, can I just read a little bit? It's not edited yet. Can I just read a little bit? Because I was in my little bubble.
Yes.
And then I read to him, and I could see in his eyes that there was so much aliveness, and he really liked it. And then the light bulb hit, well, it's boring to me because I've said this a million times.
Exactly.
But it's not boring for the other. Like that was like, So I thanked him so much, and he was so generous. So he was like a special angel to me, and he offered to come down and listen to every chapter.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, and he was genuinely interested.
Yeah, I was going to say he was probably grateful, because this is something that comes easily to you, but doesn't come easily to lots of people.
No, and he had also, he didn't have an MBA, or like for him the material was very new. So, but then when it came to the editing, it was, I think the further you get into something like that, you reach a kind of structure, right? And I thought I can't have 7 chapters and one chapter which is 3 times longer.
Yes.
Like, I can't have, and in the last chapter, I do a little touchdown in 4 different work cultures that I worked in. So it's the Nordic. So it's a chapter, and it's called Connect, right? So it's about work life in the Nordic culture with Copenhagen, and then the Mediterranean with Barcelona, and the American with San Francisco, and the Middle Eastern with Dubai. So I really touched in those places. And
so it makes it very international as well.
Yes, it's a non-US dominant book, which are so many business books are American dominated. But anyway, so in that I write a couple of 2 things that why it's interesting to work in those places. Yeah. And then I write 2 factors of why it's challenging to work in those places, so codes or behaviors that we don't know as foreigners when we arrive. And then there's a story of something I learned in that work culture.
So as you say, it's sort of like organic, but then you chose the same structure for each chapter, and that of course gave it that transparency, and that that people knew what to expect in the next one, and makes it more practical and hands-on as well, I suppose.
Yes, and just to give you a hands-on example about editing, in the beginning when I started writing about the Nordic work culture and Copenhagen, so in the beginning I thought I'll have 3 stories in each for each place of these 4 cities. And then after a while, I realized that if I do that chapter is going to take over the book. Then it's going to be a book that's about the different cities. And this is just one of 7 tools. So then, of course, then I had to take away a lot of stories. So I think when you write, you hit like in my case at least, there was like there needs to be some kind of balance, and so it's very, and so I want to say that to anybody who's listening or watching. The book is 128 pages. That is very little, but that became actually a very attractive selling point because people love short books,
especially nowadays. You know, a real war and peace stories. Nobody has time to read those anymore. You want the practical, useful. Right, you read it and you apply. It's not something that you have to wade through for the next 6 months.
No,
I agree.
So the fact that it's short, and also many people have said that they're so grateful because it's in many business books, the author kind of says something and then says it in 3 different ways in the first 20 or 30 chapters. Like there's a lot of, especially there's an American standard way of doing it. I mean, the American formula is very sort of, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, then I'm going to do it, then I'm going to tell you that I did it. Like that's the American way of writing. So this book doesn't have a lot of repetitions in that sense. That is taken out. It's very crisp. So
now, if we come back to other practical things, like, okay, so you actually did the whole process yourself. You got a friendly neighbor to be your outside eyes, let's say, on your stuff.
Yes. I did use a writing program as support, but that had nothing to do with the editing itself. It was like the structure. It was like a process. And then we had, so there was a webinar in my case, you know, with a little bit about, you know, who you're writing for, why you're writing, what
your message is, the basics. So
just like and the structure. And then we were told to have like a, you know, have the center message in the beginning and what are different things you need to say that message. So there was like a structure overview. And then there was an accountability check-in call once a week.
Yeah, and that's an important one, right?
I
hear
that
a lot.
Honestly. If not just on my own, I think it would have drowned. But that helped me a lot to have that, you know. And then it was literally, how many words have you written this week?
Okay, and that kept you going. And I mean, how do you know when it's finished? Do you know, like, you know, at some point, can you say done?
Oh, that was very clear because I had planned it all out initially. So I had the central message and like a bike spikes, you know, like.
And then you knew it was done.
Yeah. No. So that was,
and how did you publish it? Because money, of course, is often an issue for a first-time writer as well, you know, especially if you're starting out and maybe haven't got a whole amount of, you know, clients yet, you know, because we're talking about coaches here. How did you approach that?
I explored a lot and I talked to different people, you know, in the process. I talked to other people and I realized that there's a lot of publishers who wants to publish you as a new business writer. They charge huge amounts of money. And very often what they promise a lot of marketing for you. And in my case, I heard about people who had hired so-and-so and had been promised so-and-so, which didn't happen.
Right.
So I literally talked to different people and looked around. And then I knew somebody who had a friend who had just recently published on Amazon. And she was so kind to have this talk and talk me through it.
So you self-published, did you?
Yes, I self-published on Amazon, And now it's a long time ago, so now I didn't even remember the steps. But, you know, there was a process there. You can do it. And by far it's the most cost efficient.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't support Amazon as an organization. Unfortunately, they don't treat their work as well, and they're world dominant in so many ways. So one part of me wish there would be an alternative place. And I know actually that there are some other sites out there that are similar, that are alternatives. So that's the idealistic part of me.
Yes. Yeah.
I think. However, when it comes from a career perspective, it's Amazon is smart because it's accessible. People know it, people get it. And in my case, as you heard, I had a global career, so I'm in different places. Yeah. So that's
and it does have, you know, well, I totally get what you mean about the ethics around Amazon, but it does, from a practical point of view, I mean, it is our go-to, right? You know, we're looking for something, we look on Amazon because that's where we're going to find it. And so what would you say it's done? So in a way, I'm hearing you say, you know, it started for various other reasons, but what would you say from a business perspective, it has brought your business having that book?
So massive change. The moment you have written a book, you have just so much more credibility.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is, you know, when I go around, for example, today, in a couple of hours, I'm going to meet with somebody for the first time. She works for a company. I was introduced to them somehow, and maybe I will be one of their freelance, like, associate facilitators. It's a training company, right? So what do? I bring a book in my bag and I put the book on the table.
Yeah.
And so
it says it all, right? You don't even have to start going blah, 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 blah. It says it all.
And then sometimes I gift them the book and sometimes I just show them the book. Right. And so it's that, and people always have a delight when you come and go, oh, wow, you wrote a book. So it's, and so that's the credibility. And the fact that, you know, you and I have this author talk now, you and I wouldn't be talking together if I didn't have a book. This whole concept. So it facilitates curiosity, it facilitates credibility. And then when last week I had a meet the author talk here in London. It was an internal communications company. They made small little cute bookmarks with meet the author thing.
Oh, and, you know, it puts you in a totally different league. It really does, doesn't it?
Yes. And I mean, of course, the book has been out quite a while, but, you know, for people who don't know me, who don't my work, for them, it's new.
For them, it's new. I mean, and the content is still very applicable, right? So it's not going out of date.
Yes. I mean, I wrote the book when I lived in Dubai. Now I live in London. So, of course, there are some small changes there. And of course, and then, by the way, I also wrote something since then. So I wrote an ebook last year that came out. Okay. So because what happened was then when the pandemic came, we started working through the screen. And then I kept referring to my book and saying, well, this is great, but it doesn't have the tools for our online engagement. That was a much more difficult process, honestly, because I didn't have a book writing program. And it was, and I was, you know, in my own brain fog and the whole thing, you know, I was writing about how hard it was with attention span. And
it was a confusing time for everybody anyway. Yeah.
Yes. So last year I published The Right Kind of Loud Online, Mastering Meetings and Presentations from Your Home Office.
Okay.
So that is an ebook. So it's shorter. I think it's, you see, I have it here. It is, it's 50 pages.
Okay.
50 pages. And you can see here, it's a little bit like a magazine, right?
Yes.
And so, and this is this is an ebook because, of course, it was about
online right? Stuff. Makes sense. Yeah.
You know, to make sense. So, and that when I did that, what I did was I sat down and I went through all the PowerPoint slides from all the sessions I'd given in a year when the pandemic, because I was very fast out. I started selling online training 2 months after it all started.
Wow.
I was super fast.
Yeah.
Because, you know, my career stopped. I was sitting.
You had to get out there. I
had to be very fast. So I started hosting Zoom seminars. I started holding sessions. I started participating. And so I just went through all my PowerPoints. It's like, what are the lessons? By then I had developed online courses. I'd done lots of online trainings. So it's very crisp. And so that book is less, there's no stories there. It's very sort of, here's the tools.
Right. But I mean, that in itself, what you've just said is a valuable tool for people listening, is that first check what you have. You know, we keep thinking we haven't written books, but we've probably written a lot of content. Yes. I mean, I know I have something like 20 workshops. I mean, I can use that material to create 20 books. You know, I just need to do it. So it is to check, you know, what you already have and how you can convert that. And as you're saying as well, I think we do all still tend to take, you know, we need this big book and this masterpiece and all of that. That's not what people need nowadays. You know, if the idea of a book is we're fulfilling a need, right? Before, maybe, you know, our lives weren't as hectic and our need was for a huge, long, beautiful novel novel that would keep us entertained for months on end. Sadly, nowadays, it's often not the case. We need the fast and the short and the tools. Right, so if I ask you now just to summarize up for 3 main tools you would give aspiring authors out there, what would you say are the top 3 things which got you into that 3% club?
3 main things. What I did when I started this whole project, I did it in secrecy the first months. I didn't tell anyone.
Right.
Because I was so scared that I wouldn't be able to complete. And I was so scared that my friends would ask me. So I decided, I had the idea in the car with a friend, right? So she knew. And then I went home and wrote all these Post-it notes. I thought it's all going to happen over Christmas. It's all going to happen over Christmas, which didn't happen. Then I signed up for this program with and for the first 2 months, nobody knew.
Right.
So be very protective of your, and nothing drains our confidence more than saying that we're going to do it and then we don't.
Yeah.
It's
even your environment questioning it, saying, you write a book, aren't there enough books out there, and demoralize you?
Yeah, or just like, so Julie, how's it going? Did you write? Like this thing. So that was, that was very, like, I was very protective in that sense.
Yeah.
And one of my closest friends, I'll never forget when I told her, so Cecilia, I'm writing a book. Really? How? And she was just so genuinely surprised because we're very close and she loves me and she supports me. And then I explained to her, and I couldn't tell you because I was too scared. And she, of course, became one of my test readers. And also, I had test readers. That was part of that structure that we learned. So test readers is really important. And so, and there was, I was kind of in a magical wave when this happened. So test reader just appeared from right, left and center. I gave a talk somewhere and somebody came up and I want to be a test reader. And I actually had too many. I had like 12 test readers.
Wow.
I know it was. So it was in a wave of support. You don't need 12, but you need at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, indeed.
And for the test readers, I had a series of questions, so what kind of, is there anything that is unclear? Are there too many stories? What kind of genre is this for you, etc. So I had I had 5, 6.
That was also nicely structured. You didn't just give it to them and say test read. You knew what you wanted.
When I say test readers, they're not language editors. That's something
it's
you
not
have to
proofreaders, right? Yeah.
Right. So, but I had these test readers, and then I got people's different reactions, and that gives you both. That helped me with the editing, obviously. Yes. Right. So first you edit. By the way, I think I edited 6 times or something like that. And be prepared.
That's what I dread. I hate editing. I love editing other people's books. I hate editing my own stuff.
Yes. And I still remember the giant disappointment because I had finally written the draft, and I was like, yay. And I printed it out, which is an amazing feeing. And suddenly you sit within your hand.
Yeah.
That was very magical, like, whoa. And I went to one of the writing places I had was, in Mall of the Emirates in Dubai, there's a Cafe Link. That was one of my magical zones. I sat with Cafe Link and I thought, now I'm going to send it to my test readers. Yeah. And I started reading. It's like, oh, that's the type of,
gosh.
And then I realized there was like 10 things on each page. And and the body just sank because I was like, I had promised all my test readers, you need to make the test readers committed. You need to ask them, if I send it in this year, you have to ask your test readers to commit to do it within a time frame before you send it.
Yeah.
They need to agree to that, because if not, it's just going to keep hanging.
Yeah.
And I still remember that sinking feeling of like, oh my God. So I wrote it and then I edited first time to send to them, right? And then I edited, I think, one more time. And then I got their input and then I edited again and then I edited again. So it is
work, right? We're not saying that it's magical and easy. Nobody's saying it's magical and easy, but it's worth it, right? And then you've got everything that also so crystal there. Well, look, thank you very much for that, Kim. And I mean, are you going to write another one?
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for this. I mean, definitely the book in itself, I think, is also very much worth looking up. I certainly am going to order it for myself. Thank you for all those tips. I think you made it very clear and very human. I mean, I could feel that you were one of us. You know, sometimes we look at these authors and we think that, you know, it just like all happened wonderfully for them and they didn't have the sort of dilemmas and worries. So, I mean, from what I've heard you say is that it's certainly very well worth it, business-wise, but also for you yourself. And it does indeed put you in a different league. And that's something that we can always be proud of. So thank you for sharing all of that. For the rest of you out there, maybe it's time for us to take action on these tips from Kim and actually, you know, just start. And I think that idea of the first few months, it's just like usually when we're pregnant, right? The first few months, we don't actually go and advertise it all over the place because we don't want people asking us all the time. And then wait until you feel ready enough to look for that accountability and have someone which does hold you accountable. So thank you, and onwards and upwards. Thank you, Kim, very much.
Thank you, Julie. My pleasure to talk with you always. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.